Today, we are diving into a pretty incredible journey. It's about a life that went from being measured in quarterly targets to one measured in sunrises. It's the story of how one man had to unlearn 3 decades of corporate conditioning in, well, the most profound classroom you can imagine, the Himalayas. You know, Albert Einstein once said, "Look deep into nature, and then you will understand everything better." And that idea? It's really the heart of the story we're getting into today. It's about a man who did exactly that, and in the process, he completely redefined what success, progress, and even time itself really meant to him. So, who are we talking about here? Well, let's meet Shrikant Shenway. For decades, this was a man who lived and breathed the high-stakes world of corporate strategy. I mean, his entire life was just defined by the relentless pace of business.
That was his reality, It was his identity. But then, something shifted. Just 6 months before the whole world shut down for COVID, he made a really radical change. He just stepped off that path. And he did it without some grand plan for what was supposed to come next.
And get this, he was 57 years old. So this wasn't some early retirement fantasy. No, it was a very conscious decision to start what he calls his second inning, a brand new chapter where the rules wouldn't be defined by targets, but by time.
So you can really see the shift in his life laid out here. After all those years in the corporate world, he steps away. The pandemic then creates this unexpected, forced period of reflection, and that reignited a connection to the outdoors he'd had as a kid, which eventually led him to plan his very first Himalayan trek in 2022.
And this, right here, is where the story truly transforms. What started out as just an adventure, a challenging trip up into the mountains, it became something so much deeper. It actually turned into a pilgrimage.
See, his journey went way beyond just pretty landscapes. He was standing where ancient sages had meditated. He trekked parts of the old Silk Route, and he met people living in ways that have been unchanged for centuries, like a young forager carrying on an ancient tradition, or a shepherd who just offered him the simple gift of fresh goat milk.
And this really captures the change that happened inside him. The initial wow factor of seeing a massive peak transformed into a deep reverence. It became this personal, felt connection to the land, its history, and its people, something that years of business travel had never, ever offered.
So this leads us to the first major lesson, the first piece of that corporate conditioning that really started to unravel for him. It's this fundamental difference between the pressure of our modern lives and the simple presence that's demanded by the mountains. The contrast is just stark. On one side, you've got corporate life, a world run by the clock, with packed schedules and constant pressure to produce outcomes. And on the other side, Himalayan time, a world run by the sun, with the only real concerns of the bare necessities. It's a complete rewiring of how you experience every single minute of your day. This new perspective also brought a pretty sharp awareness of the downsides of our modern pace. He saw this puppy playing with a piece of trash, a small image that spoke volumes about the perils of progress, and how bringing modern access to these remote places also means bringing our waste along with us. And then, just a few days later, he saw this. An elderly woman carrying a massive haystack, preparing for winter just like her ancestors did. No corporate sustainability reports, no PowerPoint presentations needed. This was the real thing, centuries-old wisdom about living in harmony with the seasons, right there in action. Okay, so this brings us to the core revelation of this entire journey. Beyond presence and sustainability, the mountains offered a lesson that completely inverted 3 decades of corporate thinking about what it actually means to be successful. I mean, think about it. This is the ingrained commandment of corporate life, right? To climb is success. To stop, to pause, that's stagnation. And to go down, that's failure. For 30 years, this was the code he lived and died by.
But the mountains, they just flipped that entire philosophy right on its head. Up there, the climb isn't success itself. It's the grind that's full of promise. The pause at the summit, that's not stagnation, that is the reward. And the descent, the thing we see as failure in the corporate world, is actually a moment of joy and relief and wisdom.
And this quote just captures it perfectly. That moment of stillness at the top isn't just a break before you have to do the next thing. It is the thing. It's the point of balance where the whole journey, both the up and the down, makes perfect sense. So let's distill this whole experience down into 3 powerful mountain truths, the lasting lessons that the Himalayas taught him. First, true presence, the realization that time can literally stand still, and you can still be exactly where you need to be. Second, real sustainability. This idea that living in harmony with yourself and your environment beats the heck out of endless growth. And third, the joy of every phase, embracing the climb, honoring the pause, and respecting the descent as equally valuable parts of any journey.
And that leads to a question I want you to think about. In your own life, your own career, when has a pause, or maybe even a step back, turned out to be the most meaningful part of your journey?
We'll end with this thought from John Muir. Shrikant Shenwai went to the Himalayas looking for an adventure, but what he found was a completely new definition of a fulfilling life. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes when we step out into nature, we receive far, far more than we ever thought we were seeking.